Well, welcome to Scale Autocast, the
First
podcast we've been threatening about.
first episode ever. Episode
Yes.
1.
Mainly because we spun this out of Auto Off Topic, because we used to have a scale project corner, I guess. Some people were like, oh, don't talk about model cars. So we'll just make a whole podcast just to talk about model cars.
Well, let's roll it back a little bit because some people were like, no, don't talk about model cars.
Yeah.
And we were like, tough. We like model cars. This is our thing. And then some people
Mm-hmm.
were like, yeah, keep talking about model cars. It's pretty rad. We also like model cars. So we never stopped talking about model cars. We may have dropped the scale auto segment from our show, but it still comes up from time to time, and decided that it would be best to just have a separate thing dedicated to it. I don't know what the frequency of this is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be on its own channel or just released as an episode of Auto Off Topic, but we'll get to that
It's
after
its
the
own
fact.
channel.
Okay,
And I think I said monthly, so that we don't
perfect.
have to struggle to come up with stuff every week. So,
Perfect. So I think starting with that, I would honestly say that scale cars are the reason that you and I became friends as kids. Um, and that's
what's that?
really, it's really kind of the catalyst of who we are as far as car people goes. Because, we've told the story a ton of times in the other show, I think, or other shows we've guested on, that you and I grew up across the street from one another, and our dads are both car guys. We did car things, but obviously you were like 4 and I was like 7, and we couldn't drive cars. So we played with scale cars, model cars, RC cars, diecast cars, slot cars, I guess RC cars already, but any kind of Lego cars, like any kind of thing with wheels was our deal. So
Micro Machines.
you were bigger on the micro machines than I was. Yeah, that was your thing. Yeah, I had less micro machines, but I was more of a Hot Wheels guy. Speaking of which, we will do. I think one of our future episodes will be a deep dive into the maybe the history of diecast cars and where they came from and where they are. But you made a suggestion, Andrew, that since our first episode of the Auto Off Topic podcast was a a love letter to Mitsubishi cars, maybe our
Yep.
first episode of the Scale Auto podcast, Scale Auto Cast, if you will, should also be a
Yep.
love letter to Mitsubishi cars. So I have next to me I don't know, it's taller than me, so I'm just shy of 6 foot. So the cabinet's a little higher than 6 foot. Um, by 4 foot, so 6.5 by 4 foot cabinet with, I don't know, 10 or 12 shelves on it. That's full of Mitsubishis, top to bottom, nothing but, in every scale. So I have plenty of content to talk about Mitsubishis every day for every podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll spare you of that. But and obviously you can see, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, which there is a video version of this podcast. If you look in your video feed, you'll see in the background of me is more Mitsubishis on the wall, and the background of Andrew is quite literally 100 diecast cars. So, sir, you
Yeah.
have 1,000
The
diecast.
Mitsubishis are on the other shelf that you can't see.
Okay, yeah, same here. I
Uh,
mean, you see some behind me, but there's probably 500 of them in the shelf to my left, which is
But
quite frightening, actually.
yeah, like you said, this isn't just gonna be diecasts. Just Scale Autocast kind of worked because of podcasts.
Yep.
But we're also talking about model kits and probably RC cars
Yeah, yeah.
and anything
We'll have
else.
a segment where we're building models, and we can do progress as we go along, and some DIY stuff. So if you're interested in learning how to do models, we can certainly get some of that in there. We have some ideas. Ideas just require execution, and if we can execute what we want to do, I think it'll be pretty neat. There isn't a lot of podcasts on the scale car realm, simply because sometimes it's easy to run out of content. But I think that, I mean, I'll just say it. I'm 43 years old, and I have every scale car that I've ever owned in my entire life still. So I have a lot. I mean, a disturbing amount.
I so it's funny. So we might as well just get into this. I was going to talk about how I had a few as a kid, mostly like 1/18th. I never had a lot because they take up a lot of space, and I was a kid, and they're kind of expensive. I got probably a couple or nicer ones in my teens, and then for a while, I just because I was living at home, all I had was my bedroom, so I really couldn't fill it with a lot of stuff. And I didn't have a ton of money either, so I wasn't buying a lot of diecasts. I was buying more model kits,
Mm-hmm.
and only recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, I really got into the new 1/64th scale stuff.
Right.
Um,
Sorry.
you've always been into it, so uh, what really pulled me back in was when probably around was it like 2008. When did Hot Wheels release the Hakasuka GTR, the green and white one?
A little after that,
Like
probably
2009, 2010.
it was 9 or 10. Yeah, it was 9 or 10.
That's
The first release was the Datsun 510. That was their first
yep.
like vintage Japanese car that they came out with.
Yeah, when Hot Wheels started to get into the Japanese stuff, it was like, oh, I could get back into this.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, everything is
and I still
directly
didn't. Sorry.
no, everything is directly correlated to the age of the people in charge, right? So when
Yes.
you and I were kids, all the Hot Wheels cars were 50s and 60s cars because the guys
Right.
in charge were in their 30s and 40s, and those are the cars they remembered. So once people
Mm-hmm.
who are our age became in charge of things, all of a sudden we started getting Datsun 510, first gen Skylines, first gen Celicas. I'm trying to think of some of the other early cars that came out. Those were really the big ones. The 510 wagon became a thing, and then there was a Datsun pickup, and I was like, oh, wow, this is all really cool stuff. So it was
I feel like that definitely. I don't want to go too on a tangent with Hot Wheels. That I feel like that kind of reinvigorated Hot Wheels
sure 100%
and
did.
sort of kicked off, and it's kind of where we are now with how
Yep.
popular Hot Wheels are.
Yep, which we're going to have a whole
So
conversation about how annoying it is, how
yeah,
popular Hot Wheels are
but
in a future episode.
yeah, because that Hot Wheels is it's a whole own thing.
Yep,
Um, but that brought me to I think in like maybe 2012, you got me this uh Tomica
yep.
Galant,
Tomica Galant
which is probably
VR4.
like Galant VR4, which
Yep,
is probably the first like really nice 1/64 scale car I had.
sure.
I can't think of having an earlier one.
So
And
that's from the Tomica TLV or Tomica Limited Vintage hyphen Neo series.
yeah.
So Tomica Limited Vintage was a set that came out probably in the early 2000s, and they were pretty much strictly domestic market Japanese vintage cars, like think chrome bumper era. Um, I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump ahead with the Mitsubishi right here in front of you. I also have a Tomica in front of me. This is a Tomica Mitsubishi first gen Galant. This is one of the earlier Tomica ones, and you can tell looking at them how nice they are. You know, chrome bumpers, separate lenses, super clear glass, like little tiny emblems. They're very well detailed cars. Um, that is really what took me down this rabbit hole as well. Was I bought you that one for Christmas or something because I was like, Andrew needs to be affected like I am. But I actually
Yeah.
had gone to Japanese Classic Car Show JCCS for my first time ever in 2012. And I was like sort of aware of these things, but not had never really seen them, or was afraid to pull the trigger and buy one on the internet because they were expensive. And there was a vendor there who has actually since become a friend, which is probably not good. Naomi actually calls him my drug dealer because I buy all my diecast from him, and we meet in like parking lots and do diecast deals. But he Jeff Koch was there. He's goes by the Toy Pimp on Instagram, and he was really instrumental in getting me into this. And the Atomica stuff at that level was the top of the line. There was nothing nicer than Atomica TLV. And then as time went on, they did the hyphen Neo, which was for later model stuff like the Galant VR4. So I interrupted you there with the history of that, but go on.
Yeah, and then I kind of started around COVID, being home and bored. A lot of people were looking for stuff to collect. I started looking at these 164ths because they were getting really, really nice, and had a lot of subject matter that I was into, uh, right in the sweet spot of the cars I like. So I sort of started buying them, and then now suddenly I have a few hundred.
And it's funny because
um,
they're one of those things that when you buy one or two, they're cheap enough, and you're like, oh, whatever. But then you realize when you put the multiplier in there, how many you have, and you just go, oh, okay,
yeah,
oops, it's fine. Hey, it's a
yeah,
roof over your head, Andrew. There's
it
food in your
is.
kid's mouth. Your savings account isn't bone dry because of these things. It is what
Nope.
it is. It's part of it's part of being an adult with access to a
I
PayPal account and the internet.
I justify it too. Uh, will never be worth less than what I paid for them. Not that I
Nope,
buy them to resell them.
nope, nope. But if you ever, I say the same thing. If it ever came down to it, I could sell them
Yeah,
all and put money back in my pocket. Because the cool
yeah,
thing about
exactly.
them is that they're a one run only. So if they make one and it's in a certain race car scheme or a certain color, it gets made one time. So if you buy it when it first comes out, you buy it for retail. If you wait and you want it later on, you pay at least retail, if not more. I don't want to encourage that behavior because I don't like when people buy these things to resell them because some of us like to just own them and we can't buy them all when they first come out because there's literally hundreds of them every year and thousands of them every year, and we'd be absolutely broke if we did. So please don't make them worth a ton of money, but at the same time, keep them valuable.
Well, here's the thing: you and I, do not buy to resell. But what we
Nope.
tell people is the same thing we tell with full scale cars: is just buy what you like. Don't buy what people tell you to buy.
Yep.
Uh, I've certainly passed on many cars that
Sure.
I'm like, meh, that I don't really, that livery doesn't do it for me. I've already got two other ones. I really don't need that one. No big deal.
Yep.
Like, who cares?
Yep.
Um,
The mantra I live by, both scale and full size cars. Buy what you want. Buy what makes you happy. If it doesn't bring you joy, don't buy it. Don't buy it to make money. If you wind up making money in the end, it's not a sin. That's okay. But don't get
yeah.
into it to make money. Please don't get into it to make money. Unless
Then
you're
I
an
think I
actual
ended up,
reseller.
yeah. And then I think I ended up buying, this was probably the next one I bought, I feel like, because I actually own this
Mm,
truck in real life, which is the first
possibly.
in long wheelbase.
I feel like there was some in between, but that's okay.
Maybe there was some in between, but I feel like this is one of the ones that was like, oh, that's cool. I'll buy that because I have one.
Yep, and
And then I've just started buying all the stuff I like.
that is from the unfortunately named BM Creations,
Yeah.
Bowel Movement Creations. Their cars are interesting because they all have options that come with them. I'm not a huge fan of that because I think that by having changeable parts on them, it kind of takes away from some of the scale fidelity sometimes. I know that one came with larger tires you can put on it. It came with maybe a different
Yeah.
front bumper and some like push bars and stuff. Um, I know my version. I have the green version of the same truck, and it came with a roof rack and like accessories for the roof rack. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'd rather it just be a stagnant model for the shelf, especially because the larger, oversized tires literally have giant white letters on them that say BM Creations, which is weird.
White letters in.
Yeah, turn them in for sure. But that's one of the many companies that is popping up doing these other diecast things. So what's
The
really
wheels
amazing,
roll,
yeah,
which is
which is
apparently a
another.
big thing for some collectors. I don't know why.
I'm anti rolling wheels. I don't know about you, but
I
um,
don't get it.
if I'm not buying it to play with it, and I'm not because they're not toys, they're adult
Adult collectibles.
collectibles, Andrew. I don't want it to roll because I don't want to roll off the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much better if it doesn't roll. That being said, the origin of these things is toys, right? If
Yeah.
it wasn't for Hot Wheels, would we have Tarmac Works? Would we have Ignition Model? Would we have
No.
Shuko? We wouldn't have any of these things. They all come from from diecast cars, starting with Hot Wheels cars way back in the day. Um, and Hot Wheels has been, believe it or not, doing foreign cars for years. I have in front of me even one here that's actually from my actual youth, and it's a foreign car and it's a Mitsubishi, but it says Dodge on the side because it's a Dodge Ram D50. Um,
Hmm.
but even you look at it, it has a little 2.6 G54B coming out of the hood, just the valve cover. But
Oh,
so
weird.
they have done these things in the past. Here's actually the suspension in the back that raises for whatever reason. So raises and lowers for high riding action. They have done foreign cars over the years, but I mean, again, this is probably came out in '86 or so. It's a first gen D50 slash Mighty Max. Doesn't have a lot of detail. It's kind of the suggestion of a D50 Mighty Max. Whereas if you look at some of their more recent releases, this is a Pajero Evo, and it's as nice as some high end diecast would have been 15, 20 years ago. So, and somehow, I'm not sure how, through this time of inflation, these Hot Wheels cars are still $1. Sometimes $1.20. But I don't know
If you can
how.
find them.
Yeah, well, that's again for another episode. But I don't know how this car and that car both came out in a price point of $1, and they're nearly 40 years apart. That's a pretty impressive streak. So we'll take it. But there is literally something for everybody. You want to spend $1, you can spend $1. You want to spend $20. Most of the Tomica TLVs, like we showed earlier, are $20. Um, you mentioned the higher end stuff, like the Innos or the Tarmacs. Those are 20 to 25 depending on it. This is a Tarmac Works Mitsubishi Starion. You can buy this usually
Okay.
about $20, right?
So that's what I wanted to talk about. So you have the Inno that's a Tarmac Works
This is a
Starion.
Tarmac Works, yes.
Uh, I have the Auto World Starion right here.
Okay.
Uh, so this is wild, right? So as Mitsubishi enthusiasts, suddenly in 2023, there is so many versions of scale Mitsubishis that did not exist
Yes.
just 5 years ago.
Yes.
Um, like, and my joke to you earlier was that I think current Mitsubishi is making more money off licensing their old designs for diecasts than maybe selling new cars.
Yeah, actually, I have an open version of that Auto World right there. So the Auto World is a wide body, so
Yep.
86 through 89. The
Yep.
Tarmac, the Tarmac and the Pop Race are both narrow bodies, and they have the street version that I just showed, and they also have a race car version, which they have multiple liveries of that come in the
Yes.
same kind
I've
of
got
packaging.
multiples of those too.
Yes, I have one of each at
um,
least. So
the what's interesting, I actually passed, there was a black one at the store the other day. That is not the one that was the Auto World exclusive. I passed on
correct.
that the other day because I already had the black Auto World one.
So the Black Auto World exclusive is a Starion, and it
Yep.
has the rare factory Starion lettering down the side.
Yeah.
The one you can buy at Walmart now is actually a
Yep.
Conquest.
Oh, is it?
So it's a Black Conquest, not a Black Starion. So
Oh,
obviously the
okay.
difference is literally like the Mitsubishi emblem on the front is not there.
Yeah.
So in
And again, that's
1/64th
why
scale,
I was like, I don't really need it.
I have both, but that's me.
Yeah, you can.
But I
I have the
have
white one here.
the way my display is worked up. I have every color available in a package on the back display hanging up, and then I have some open ones in front of it. So far they've done white, red, and black conquests. And they've done white Starion, black Starion, and Palermo gray Starion. So I have unfortunately purchased all of them.
Yeah. And the other thing that Auto World's coming out with is DSMs,
Yep,
first gen DSMs.
first gen
So
DSMs, which are almost previously completely and totally unavailable in diecast form. Almost.
yeah, they're extremely rare
Yeah.
until 2023, 2024
Yeah.
when they're
I'm
going
going to
to come out.
stand up on
So
camera here because I didn't prepare for this, but I do have the earlier ones, so we can take a look at them because they are bad. They are very bad. So this was your availability of 164 scale diecast DSM prior to 2024, because the other one's coming out after December's over, I'm pretty sure.
If you're holding it up to low, there you go.
This is from a company called Zymex. It's really terrible.
So that's basically the concept car.
So this is the Mitsubishi X2S concept car.
Yeah.
It was made by a diecast company called Zymex. It's almost no detail. It's pretty terrible in every way, shape, and form. It is impossible to find. I searched for this car for a solid 10 years of collecting. And I finally found that wasn't $50, because I'm not paying $50 for a car that looks like this, like has barely any detail. But it was kind of like one of those, like, what do they call it? What do collectors call it? The Holy Grail. Yeah. The Holy Grail of my diecast collection was this car. Just because I knew it existed, and as a Mitsubishi diecast completionist, again, I have hundreds, I had to have it. The only other 164th one prior to that was this one here by a company called Ertl, which I'm sure you remember. Ertl was big in the 1/18th scale thing in the 90s. Well, they tried their hand at 1/64th scale stuff at one point. Toy level, not collector quality, but this is obviously a 1G DSM. And it was part of what they called the Speed Strips series. And inside of it is loaded a little comic, and it came with a little viewer you snapped it onto the top of, and it showed a little comic about the car. So that was literally it for 1/64th scale diecast Eclipses or Talons or first gens. There were a couple other scales. There's a 1/43rd that we both have. It's actually on my shelf in the back there, so I'm not going to get up and get it, but it's a very nice 1/43rd scale. And there was also this 1/24th scale, which came out this year or end of last year, maybe, but it's within the past year or so. It's this 1/24th scale with, it's an export, or I guess import model. Fun fact: the Eclipse never was made in right-hand drive, so this is a Japanese market left-hand drive car, and you can tell by the yellow quarter markers and the particular wheels and a couple other minor details that make it the Japanese market car. So there were a couple others. There was a 1/43rd scale and a 1/16th scale. I do, of course, have both because I'm a dummy, but I won't get into those today. Maybe at some point we'll dive deep into Eclipse diecasts and I'll pull them all out, but that's where we're at for now.
Yeah, I think I was trying to think back in my collecting history a little bit too, just to kind of bounce around a little bit, but I definitely, like I was saying, I was in the 1/18th a little bit in the 90s, and then the mid 2000s. I think 1/43rds kind of came down in price and went up in quality.
So there were a couple of brands.
I had several 1/43rds, like the Kyoshos, the HPIs.
Yep. 1/43rd,
and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
1/43rd was either garbage and cheap or really nice and really expensive. There was no in between. Yeah. And they became kind of a consumer market in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s with IXO, HPI got into the game. Actually, I have an HPI right here. This is an HPI 1/43rd Pajero.
That I've never found, and it's very expensive now.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap when I bought it either. But that's an HPI. So they had some fairly inexpensive ones as well. But I don't want to admit what I put for that for. So.
And it's basically just because I got this one recently, which was the Kinjiro Paris de la Cap Pajero.
Yep.
So Kinjiro was the driver. So I actually bought it directly from him.
Okay.
In Japan, because he was like selling this like a fan pack. Yeah, it was like this, a signed picture, a T-shirt. It's kind of cool. So, and it has a special packaging with his like logo, Lightning Kinjiro. So that was kind of cool. I don't have many 1/43rds anymore, or I have a few, but I really have been focusing on the 1/64ths because they take up less space, and they're basically just as nice now. They're so nice.
Well, I
And
recently learned that one of the premier 143rd manufacturers now is Ignition.
yep,
They're a Japanese company. They do a lot of Japanese um, domestic 143rd scales, 118 scales. I noticed that they were doing some resin 164s that they were selling in collaboration with Tarmac.
yeah.
But I dug a little deeper into it, and Tarmac is actually part of Ignition Model.
Oh,
And that is why they're so nice, because Ignition Model has very high standards for all of their releases. And Tarmac is actually part of Ignition Model. So that makes sense.
yeah. I remember Auto Art was like our gold standard for a while for 118th.
Yep,
Um, for the stuff that we like, but then
sure.
yeah, now
And
we're
it
into
was
these little
expensive.
ones.
Yeah. It was
Yeah, the problem
nothing
is
compared to what they cost now for a nice 118th, but they were nice.
no, no, but it's now these 164ths are smaller, they're easier to store, they look really nice, and if you're a
They're
Mitsubishi
cheaper.
fan, there's a ton of Mitsubishis finally.
Yep.
So
So a very nice 118th scale now of a street car. Race cars usually cost a little bit more, but a really nice. And now they're resin cast. They don't have opening panels. They're a little bit less.
yeah,
They look
diecast is
more.
a
Yeah.
non-term, right?
The resin cast 118ths, they have higher scale fidelity because the parts are thinner. But there's usually less moving parts, no opening hoods, no opening trunks, opening doors, which I don't care about. They sit on the shelf. The less you touch them, the better anyway. Um, so a good resin cast, like we'll use an Evo for an example, an Evo 5 from Auto or Tarmac or any of these companies is $200. So you can buy one 118 scale for $200, or you can buy one really
Yeah.
nice detailed version of the same car for $20. So then you could have 10 more cars for the same price as one. And is that necessary? I don't know. Maybe not, but it's how I justify it. I have never spent $200 in one diecast car. Um, so
I it's pretty close with that 143rd DSM. That is the high mark
yeah, that
or
was
Mark 43
150,
high mark.
I think.
Those are
Yeah,
150. But
yeah,
because I own a first gen DSM, I wanted
sure.
it. I never had one before.
I have.
Um,
It's a high story. Actually, is the name of the company.
high story, that's what it is.
And I have two high story cars that both cost that same kind of money. But they're both of cars that I own. One of them being that first gen DSM that you have, and the other one being a white flat body Starion. So
Yeah.
that's
So I've
also
got
a
the
high
white
story.
Mark 43 143rd Galant VR4,
Galant.
which was
Yeah.
also very expensive, like $150. But
Yeah.
that
That.
I don't buy any other ones from that brand because I just wanted the two cars that
Yep.
I actually own.
Yeah. No,
But
I've
yeah,
I've
with
paid $100 a few times, 150 a couple of times, but I haven't broke that $200 mark yet. And there's a couple of resin cast 118 scales that are really high on my list and really close to getting there, but we'll see. It's a lot. It's a lot of money to blow
all
on a
right.
toy car.
So I don't want to get too long here. We kind of went without a script. We're talking
Sure.
about our Mitsubishi stuff because that's how we got into cars. We're into Mitsubishis. We're into scale cars. But I think we'll do different episodes. We'll try to pick themes since we're only doing this once a month. We'll try to do some like new releases because you and I are pretty good about getting some of the newer stuff pretty quickly.
Usually.
Um, yeah, I get a lot of stuff. Actually, the yen to dollar is pretty good right now. So
Yep.
if you buy from Japan and you
Yep.
bundle stuff,
You
shipping's not
bundle
too
stuff for
bad. So
shipping. Yeah. No, it works out pretty
um,
well.
I end up with quite a few things. Maybe the next episode we talk about those new F40s from
Yeah. Sure.
Tarmac Works.
I got one right and running.
Um, yeah, I
And
don't give it
we
away.
can even expand from just total scale car stuff to other car collecting stuff. Like, I mean, I have everything Mitsubishi related. I even have this sweet set of actual postage stamps from
Oh, it's right.
Mitsubishi history from the country of Ghana. So, or some weird country somewhere. I have to look up what the country is, but I mean, literally, it's postage stamps. It's vintage Mitsubishis on them.
I
So,
also forgot that like all the new model kits,
oh yeah, we had plenty of those too. So
like
we got content for years,
like
Andrew.
these didn't exist until like
Nope,
2 years ago.
nope, nope. Box type Lancers, There's a Hasegawa does a Galant GTO,
Hasegawa does all the new versions of the Galant VR4
the
now.
Galant VR4 race
Like they used to only
car.
have like two.
Yep. There's BMAX does the Starion flat side rally car
Yep.
and street and road race car. So yeah, there is so much out there now as a Mitsubishi collector. I'm honestly glad that it came out now and not
Right?
15 years ago when I couldn't afford it. So it's much
Yeah.
better to be an adult with this stuff than it was a kid. I mean, I'll collect anything Mitsubishi that's even not even full scale. Like I even love these little tuned little, you know, uh, I can't remember what they're called right now. Koraku's,
Yep.
just dumb little Mitsubishi toys or pullbacks. You put the penny in the back. I don't actually use it for that because it would break. But I mean, we're literally at a point where even Auto World took over the AFX slot cars, and
Yeah.
they have a second gen Eclipse slot car. So I mean, we can thank
Mm-hmm.
Fast and the Furious for that, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
they but it exists, and that's wild to me. So good time to be a scale car enthusiast. Great time to be a scale Mitsubishi enthusiast.
All
Oh,
right, cool. Well, we do post pretty regularly we have an Instagram called Scale Autocast. That's been out a lot longer than this podcast. We've been threatening to release this podcast for probably 2 years.
at
But the
least.
original Auto Off Topic podcast launched in November of 2016. So I was like, you know what? We're coming back up on November. Let's actually do this podcast. We've got some time now.
Sure.
And we've got all this content, these cars. We go over them. We take pictures of them. We'll throw them on the Instagram. I've taken some pictures. I've been throwing them on the Scale Autocast threads, so you can go follow us there too. You can follow me on Instagram, Race and Anger. If you're a listener of Auto Off Topic, you probably already do. But if not, come find us. Brad, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me and you together on the Discord with all of our friends that listen and follow along to the podcast.
Oh, that's right.
They
We do have an.
can,
Sorry, I was
yep,
going to
they
say we
can.
do have an Auto Off Topic Discord
We do, and
with
they
a
can.
Scale Autocast channel.
We do have a Scale Auto
So,
channel on there, which we do some model builds and RC stuff and all kinds of cool stuff.
yep.
We have find me at. I almost said Raced in Anger. Jesus. They can
Yeah.
find me on Instagram at TSISS350 and also on Threads. And also find me cross posting to Auto Off Topic in all those places and to Scale Autocast in those places. So
Yeah, I don't have anything to sign off with on this one. So this episode might not even have a theme song. We're just kind of
keep your
figuring it out as we go,
cars
building it up.
keep your cars in scale and not in the roses
I don't
bush.
know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Don't buy too many scale cars. But
No,
that's not
you
what I
bet.
would do.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll see everybody next time. Have a good one.